Hey everyone, we're going to talk about fiscal standards right now. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. So on your page, you're going to see this link. So go ahead and open the link, and it'll take you to a document we created that merges 59A with 429 and some other things. So Cheryl, I'll start out. So it's 59A-36.013 Fiscal Standards. Number 1, financial stability. The facility must be administered on sound financial basis in order to ensure adequate resources to meet resident needs pursuant to the requirements of Chapter 408, Part 2, which is Assisted Living Facility Licensing. 429.17, expiration of a license, renewal, and conditional use. In addition to the requirements of Part 2, Chapter 408, each facility must report to the agency any adverse court action concerning the facility's financial viability within 7 days after its occurrence. The agency shall have access to books, records, and any other financial documents maintained by the facility to the extent necessary to determine the facility's financial ability.
All right, what that means in assisted living, when an inspector comes, at any time they can come and audit your books. They can look in your food cabinets to make sure you have enough food. They're looking for tears on furniture, dirty living conditions, anything that would tip them off to maybe that you're in financial distress.
A for rent sign, or like
Like
if somebody found a foreclosure notification, or if somebody complained about not having enough food, like you mentioned, that may be an indication of not being financially adequate to maintain the residence.
Right, and also not paying your staff on time. They could report that you're not paying them on time, or maybe you did and they're making up a false complaint, but that would actually set off an inspection too.
And that's what they'd be looking for. They'd be looking to make sure you're on a strong financial basis.
Resident trust funds. Funds or other property received by the facility belonging to or due a resident, including personal funds, must be held as trust funds and expended only for the resident's account. Resident funds or property may be held in one bank account if a separate written accounting for each resident is maintained. A separate bank account is required for the facility funds. Commingling resident funds with facility funds is prohibited. Written accounting procedures for resident trust funds must include income and expense records of the trust fund, including the source of deposition of the funds. Right here, looking at number 2, I see a test question that actually is a potential test question. So I would highlight the commingling resident funds with facility funds and keeping a separate bank account. So that somehow could be worded on the test and thrown in there. 3. A facility, upon mutual consent with the resident, shall provide for the safekeeping in the facility of personal effects not in excess of $500 and funds of the resident not in excess of $500 cash, and shall keep complete and accurate records of all such funds and personal effects received. If a resident is absent from a facility for 24 hours or more, the facility may provide for safekeeping of the resident's personal effects in excess of $500. So 2 potential test questions there that I can stick out to me is the $500 in funds and $500 in cash.
Mm-hmm.
They may do a multiple choice question.
No, $500 in personal effects and $500 in.
They may have a test question for the $500 in cash and put different things like A, $200, B, $300, C, $500, and D, $1,000, and you have to choose the best answer, which would be the $500.
500.
Correct.
Right.
And then also what sticks out is the 24 hours, the resident being absent from the facility.
Yep. Okay. So just so you know, this is the blue sections are 429 and the black sections are 59A. And the reason why we put them there is they reference 429. We try to put a snippet in there. So let's go on to surety bonds. Surety bonds pursuant to the requirements of 429.27, which is the Bill of Rights. For entities that own more than one facility in the state one surety bond may be purchased to cover the needs of all the residents served by the entities. B. The following additional bonding requirements apply to facilities serving residents with OSS. OSS is a funding program. If serving as representative payee for a resident receiving OSS, the minimum bond proceeds must be equal to twice the value of the resident's monthly aggregate income, which must include any supplemental security income or Social Security disability income, plus the OSS payments, including the personal needs allowance. If holding a power of attorney for a resident receiving OSS, the minimum bond proceeds must equal twice the value of the resident's monthly aggregate income, which must include any supplemental security income or Social Security disability income, the OSS payments, including the personal allowance, plus the value of any property belonging to a resident held at the facility. Upon the annual issuance of a new bond or continuation bond, the facility must file a copy of the bond with the agency central office. So I would definitely say that could be a test question, that you have to file a copy of your bond annually with the central office.
Anything marked, anything that says it's annually, biannually, weekly, monthly, those are things to highlight and remember, because those are good test questions, because they're testing your knowledge on whether you know the timelines of these rules. So at 429.27, property and personal affairs of residents. A facility or an owner, administrator, employee, or representative thereof may not act as the guardian, trustee, or conservator for any resident of the assisted living facility or any of such resident's property. An owner, administrator, or staff member or representative may not act as the competent resident's payee for Social Security, veterans, or railroad benefits without the consent of the resident. Any facility whose owner, administrator, staff, or representative serves as the representative payee for any resident of the facility shall file a surety bond with the agency in the amount equal to twice the average monthly aggregate income or personal funds due to residents or expendable for their account, which are received by the facility. Any facility whose owner, administrator, staff, or representative is granted power of attorney for any resident of the facility shall file a surety bond with the agency for each resident for whom such power of attorney is granted. The surety bond shall be in an equal amount, equal to twice the average monthly income of the resident, plus the value of any resident's property under the control of the attorney in fact. The bond shall be executed by the facility as principal and a licensed surety company. The bond shall be conditioned upon the faithful compliance of the facility with this section and shall run to the agency for benefit of any resident who suffers a financial loss as a result of the misuse or misappropriation by a facility of funds held pursuant to this subsection. Any surety company that cancels or does not renew the bond of any license shall notify the agency in writing not less than 30 days in advance of such action, given the reason for the cancellation or renewal. Any facility owner, administrator, or staff or representative who is granted power of attorney for any resident of the facility shall, on a monthly basis, be required to provide the resident a written statement of any transaction made on behalf of the resident pursuant to this subsection. A copy of such statement given to the resident shall be retained in each resident's file and available for agency inspection. So in there I would highlight the 30 days notice. That's a really good potential test question. Anything you saw for test question? Maybe the twice the average monthly income, but I don't think that would. I think the 30 days would be what I would highlight in there.
Okay, continuing on with 429.27. Number 4, any funds or other property belonging or due to a resident or expendable for his or her account, which is received by a facility, shall be trust funds, which shall be kept separate from the funds of the property of the facility and other residents, or shall be specifically credited to such resident. Such trust funds shall be used or otherwise expended only for the account of the resident. At least once every 3 months, I would definitely think this is a test question. At least once every 3 months, unless upon order of a court of competent jurisdiction, the facility shall furnish the resident and his or her guardian, trustee, or conservator, if any, a complete and verified statement of all funds and other property to which this subsection applies, detailing the amount and items received, together with their sources of disposition. In any event, the facility shall furnish such statement annually and upon the discharge or transfer of the resident. Any government agency or private charitable agency contributing funds or other property to the account of the resident shall also be entitled to receive such statement annually and upon the discharge of the or transfer of the resident. So at least once every 3 months, you should furnish the resident or the guardian a complete and verified statement of all funds and other property. Okay?
All right, liability insurance. Facilities must maintain liability insurance coverage as defined in section 624.605 FS that remains in force at all times. On the renewal date of the facility's policy, or whenever a facility changes policies, the facility must file documentation of continued coverage with the agency central office. Such documentation may be issued by the insurance company and must include the name and street address of the facility, a reference that the facility is an assisted living facility, the facility's license capacity, and the date's coverage.
That's pretty standard what will be on your certificate of insurance, the COI. So you basically, when you get your new renewal, you have to send it up to the ACA's central office. If you don't, they're going to call you and say, hey, we didn't receive these things, so you want to file it annually, as well as your fire inspection and your health department inspection, a few other things.
The test question I pull from there would be, where do you send the renewal? So the agency central office could be will be the option in the right choice, but they could put the ombudsman,
Department of Elder Affairs, or nothing
in your facility file.
Right.
So that's how I could see something worded from there.
But just to point out where it references, facilities must maintain liability insurance coverage as defined in section 624.605, Florida statutes down below. We copied it. They define what casualty insurance is. Liability insurance is insurance against legal liability for the death, injury, or disability of any human being or for damage to property, with provision for medical, hospital, and surgical benefits to the injured persons, irrespective of the legal liability of the insured. So when you're getting your liability insurance, that's what it needs to cover. Okay? Did I interrupt you, or am I taking? Okay.
No, you're
So
taking this.
429, 2.7.275, business practice, personal records, and liability insurance this is from the Florida statutes. The assisted living facility shall be administered on sound financial basis that is consistent with good business practices. The administrator or owner of a facility shall maintain accurate business records that identify, summarize, and classify funds received and expenses dispersed, and shall use written accounting procedures and a recognized accounting system. The administrator or owner of a facility shall maintain personal records for each staff member, which contain at minimum documentation of background screening, if applicable, documentation of compliance with all training requirements. And the administrator or owner of a facility shall maintain liability insurance coverage that is in force at all times. The agency may, by rule, clarify terms, establish requirements for financial records, accounting procedures, personal procedures, insurance coverages, and reporting procedures, and specify documentation as necessary to implement this section. So there's basically the rule that they have. So anything else on this, Cheryl? Do you think we covered it in detail? I wouldn't memorize everything. The test is 100 questions. I would say of the tests, and you're going to hear us repeat this again and again, 25% medication, 25% administration, 25% records, and then 5 questions here and there on different things. But there are a few questions in this section that will be on
Right.
each one of those.
I
steps.
recommend just making a side list as you're going through the training, and anytime we highlight something or talk about, go ahead and jot that down, and that way you'll have a good study guide towards the end too.
Yeah, and we also cover it again, Cheryl does, in the exam prep. Okay, so let's move on to the next section.